Hello there, and a massive welcome to Comprehensible English Hub. I'm so genuinely thrilled you're here with me today because we're about to embark on a journey that could fundamentally change the way you experience the English language. Have you ever been in a conversation in English, nodding along, a polite smile fixed on your face, while inside your mind is racing, desperately trying to catch the meaning, like trying to grab smoke? Or maybe you've watched a movie and even with subtitles felt that frustrating gap between hearing the sounds and truly understanding the story? You're not alone! So many of us in North America and Europe, even after years of study, find that listening remains the trickiest part. It's that feeling of being just on the edge of understanding, but not quite there. It's like the message is locked behind a door and you're fumbling for the key. But what if I told you that the most powerful English listening skills aren't about straining your ears harder, or memorizing more vocabulary lists, or endlessly drilling grammar rules? What if the real secret lies in something far more natural, more intuitive, and dare I say, more enjoyable? What if the key to unlocking English listening is understanding that there are certain approaches, certain English listening skills you can't ignore if you truly want to make a breakthrough? Today, we're diving deep into these skills. And this isn't about rigid rules. It's about a shift in perspective, a way of engaging with English that works with your brain's natural ability to learn. This approach is at the heart of what we call comprehensible input. It sounds a bit technical, perhaps, but the idea is beautifully simple. We acquire language when we understand messages, not when we consciously learn rules, but when we receive input, listening or reading that is mostly understandable, yet offers us something a little new. Think of it as how you learned your first language, effortlessly through context and connection. And to help us visualize these powerful ideas, imagine we have a guide, a friendly expert character we call the breakthrough master, who will be appearing with us, showing these concepts in action. You'll see what I mean. It's quite fun. My little nephew, trying to explain his day, once said, "The doggy go woof woof, then boom crash, then sad." I didn't get every detail of the boom crash, but I got the gist. His enthusiastic, if imperfect, storytelling was comprehensible input. So let's explore the first English listening skill you simply can't ignore, the art of listening for. The gist, not every single word. Many of us were taught, perhaps indirectly, that successful listening means understanding every single word spoken. If we miss a word, panic sets in. We think, "Oh no, I've lost the thread." And then, while we're worrying about that one missed word, we miss the next 5. It's a downward spiral. I remember preparing for a big presentation in English early. In my career, I was listening to a talk by a renowned expert, trying to absorb every nuance. But I got so hung up on a few unfamiliar technical terms, I completely missed her main argument. I walked away flustered, feeling like a failure. But here's a liberating truth. Fluent native speakers don't always catch every single word either, especially in fast conversation or noisy environments. What they are incredibly good at is getting the main idea, the gist. They focus on the overall message. Imagine the breakthrough master is with us now, visually showing this. Perhaps on one side, we see a listener frantically trying to catch individual falling letters, most of them slipping through their fingers. But on the other side, the breakthrough master is calmly watching complete, meaningful images form from a gentle stream of information. That's listening for the gist. How do you cultivate this? Start by setting an intention. My goal is to understand the main message. When you listen to a podcast, a news report, or even a casual conversation, ask yourself afterwards, what was the main point here? What were they trying to convey? Not what were all the specific words they used. This shift in focus is revolutionary. It takes the pressure off and allows your brain to do what it does best, find patterns and meaning. You'll find that if you understand 70-80% of the content, your brain often beautifully fills in the gaps, inferring the rest from context. This isn't about being lazy. It's about being efficient and effective. It's about seeing the forest, not just individual trees. This leads us directly to the second listening skill you can't ignore. Harnessing the power of context. Your secret decoder ring. Language rarely exists in a vacuum. It's wrapped in layers of context, the situation, the speaker's tone of voice, their facial expressions, gestures. the topic being discussed, what was said before. These are not just optional extras. They are powerful clues that help you decode meaning, especially when you encounter unfamiliar words or phrases. Think of context as your secret decoder ring, the kind you might have had as a kid from a cereal box that magically revealed hidden messages. I once attended a workshop in Germany. My German was, let's say, enthusiastic but limited. During a coffee break, a fellow attendee started speaking to me quite animatedly, using many words I didn't know. My first instinct was to panic, but then I looked around. We were standing by the coffee machine. He was gesturing towards the empty milk carton with a slightly exasperated look. He then pointed towards the conference organizer. The context was clear. We're out of milk, and perhaps you know if they're bringing more or where the organizer is. I didn't need to understand every word of his complaint about the milchmangle to grasp his message. Our breakthrough master could show this perfectly. Imagine a scene. Someone is speaking, but their words are slightly muffled, unclear. But then we see them shiver, rub their arms, and glance towards an open window on a clearly cold day. Suddenly, the muffled words, perhaps something like, schwer, chilly, close that, become crystal clear, even if we didn't catch the exact sounds. That's context in action. So how do you actively use context? Become a detective. When you're listening, don't just focus on the sounds, pay attention to everything else. Who is speaking? To whom? Where are they? What's their body language saying? What's the overall topic? You'll be amazed at how much these clues can illuminate the meaning. This is especially powerful when watching TV series or movies in English from, say, the UK or the US. The visual context, the setting, the character's actions provides a rich tapestry of meaning that supports the dialogue. This skill turns listening from a purely auditory task into a full-body, immersive experience. It's active, engaged listening. Try this. Next time you're watching something, even in your native language, consciously notice all the contextual clues you use to understand. Then apply that awareness to English. Now let's talk about something that holds many learners back. And that brings us to our third essential skill: embracing good enough. Understanding and letting go of perfection. This is huge. For many driven individuals, especially in Western cultures where achievement is highly valued, the idea of good enough can feel uncomfortable. We want 100%. We want perfection. But in language learning, especially with listening, striving for perfect understanding of every single utterance from the get-go can be counterproductive. It creates anxiety, and anxiety is a massive barrier to language acquisition. Dr. Stephen Krashen talks about the affective filter. Basically, when we're stressed, anxious, or self-conscious, a mental block goes up that prevents input from getting through. Imagine you're trying to learn to swim. If your goal is to swim like an Olympic champion on your very first day, you'll probably end up just splashing frantically and feeling defeated. But if your goal is to float, then to take a few strokes to feel comfortable in the water, that's achievable. And it builds confidence for the next step. Listening is similar. If you understand the main idea, if you can follow the story or the conversation reasonably well, that is success. That is good enough to learn from. Let's picture our breakthrough master trying to assemble a complex piece of flat pack furniture, something many of us in North America and Europe can relate to with a shudder. If they insisted on understanding every single diagram perfectly before even touching a screw, they'd never start. But if they get the general idea, start putting pieces together, and learn as they go, occasionally referring back to the instructions, when truly stuck, they'll eventually build that bookcase. Similarly, if you catch the gist of a conversation, you're building your understanding. Some details might be fuzzy, like a slightly blurry photograph, but the main subject is recognizable. That's progress. A personal story. I love listening to English language podcasts about history. Some narrators speak quickly with rich vocabulary. Initially, I'd pause constantly, looking up words. It was exhausting and broke the flow. Then I decided to just listen, to let the story wash over me, aiming for good enough understanding. Sometimes I'd miss details, but I always got the main sweep of events. And guess what? Over time, those fuzzy details started to become clearer naturally, without me forcing it. The vocabulary started to stick because I was hearing it in compelling context. So here's a practical challenge. For 1 week, when you listen to English, consciously tell yourself, My goal is good enough understanding. If you get the main idea, celebrate that as a win. If you feel anxiety rising because you missed something, take a breath. Remind yourself of this principle and refocus on the overall message. You might be surprised at how much more you understand and enjoy it when you release the pressure of perfection. This doesn't mean you don't strive to improve. It means you allow yourself to learn naturally, incrementally, through repeated exposure to meaningful messages. This brings us to a skill that might sound counterintuitive in our fast-paced, always new culture, but it's incredibly powerful. The magic of re-listening, discovering hidden layers. This is the fourth English listening skill you absolutely cannot ignore. How often do you listen to a song you love multiple times? Or rewatch a favorite movie? Probably quite often. Why? Because you enjoy it, and each time you might notice something new. A subtle lyric, a clever bit of dialogue, a background detail. The same principle applies with even greater benefits to listening for language acquisition. When you listen to a piece of audio in English for the first time, as say an interesting story, an interview, or a segment from a podcast, your brain is working hard just to understand the basic plot, the main ideas. Who are the people? What's happening? Where is this going? As we discussed, you're aiming for the gist. But when you listen to that same piece of audio a second, third, or even fourth time, something magical happens. Because you already know the basic story, your brain is freed up. It's no longer struggling just for basic comprehension. Now, it can start noticing other things. How sentences are structured, interesting vocabulary words, which now make more sense because you know the context. The rhythm and flow of the language, pronunciation, nuances. It's like going from a sketch to a full-color painting. The details emerge. Our breakthrough master could illustrate this beautifully. First time listening, they have a simple, rough sketch of a scene. Second time, colors start to fill in. Third time, finer details, textures, and expressions become visible. Each re-listen adds a layer of richness and understanding, not just of the content, but of the language itself. And crucially, because you choose content you find genuinely interesting or enjoyable, it doesn't feel like a chore. It's not a boring drill. It's re-engaging with something you like. Years ago, I was fascinated by a series of radio dramas. The first time I listened to an episode, I was on the edge of my seat, just following the mystery. I enjoyed it so much, I listened again a few days later. This time, I wasn't anxious about what happens next. Instead, I found myself noticing clever phrases the detective used, the way characters express sarcasm or surprise with their tone. I even started to unconsciously mimic some of the intonation patterns. I wasn't trying to study the language, I was just re-enjoying a good story. But the language acquisition was happening naturally as a byproduct of that enjoyable, repeated input. So here's your invitation. Find a short audio piece in English that you find genuinely engaging. Maybe a 5 to 10 minute story, a podcast, segment, even a scene from a TV show you like. Try audio only first, then with visuals. Listen to it once for the main idea. Then a day or two later, listen again. Maybe a third time later in the week. Don't analyze it, just listen. Notice what new things jump out at you. You'll start to understand more deeply, and those new words and phrases will begin to feel familiar, almost like old friends. This isn't about mind-numbing repetition of boring textbook dialogues. It's about leveraging the power of repetition with content that is compelling to you. That's a cornerstone of comprehensible input. Let's pause and think for a moment. We've talked about listening for the gist, using context, embracing good enough, and the magic of re-listening. Can you see how these skills work together? They shift listening from a passive, often stressful activity to an active, engaged, and more relaxed process of discovery. They are skills you can't ignore because they align with how your brain is naturally wired to learn. How will you know? These skills are working. It's not about test scores. It's when you find yourself listening to an English conversation at a cafe and you catch the drift, even with the background noise. It's when you watch a news report from London or New York and follow the main story without feeling lost. It's when you listen to an English song and suddenly lyrics you've heard a dozen times finally click. It's that moment of realization when you forget you're practicing listening and you're just understanding. You're just enjoying the message, the story, the connection. That's the breakthrough. Our breakthrough master would be giving a big thumbs up right here, maybe even doing a little victory dance, because that feeling of effortless understanding is the ultimate reward. One of the most exciting things about this approach is that it changes your relationship with English. It's no longer an adversary to be conquered, but a world to be explored. These listening skills aren't just techniques. They are invitations to engage more deeply, more confidently, and more joyfully with the English language. Think of the last time you truly lost yourself in a good story, in any language. That feeling of immersion, of connection, that's what we're aiming for in your English listening journey. So what's the now what? The now what is to try. Pick one of these skills this week. Maybe start with listening for the gist. Find something interesting, something you want to listen to. A podcast about your hobby, a talk by someone you admire, a chapter from an audiobook. And just listen, aiming for the main message. See how it feels. Notice if the pressure eases. The journey to fluent listening isn't about finding one magic pill. It's about adopting a mindset and a set of skills that make the process natural and sustainable. These listening skills, listening for the gist using context, embracing good enough understanding, and the magic of re-listening are truly skills you can't ignore because they empower you. They put you in the driver's seat of your own learning journey. As you practice these, you'll not only improve your listening comprehension, but you'll also find your vocabulary growing, your understanding of grammar deepening without tedious study, and your overall confidence in English soaring. It's all interconnected. The breakthrough master isn't just a fun visual. It represents that moment of clarity, that joyful aha when the language just clicks, not because you forced it, but because you allowed yourself to understand. Thank you for joining me on this exploration today. I hope this has shed new light on what it truly means to listen and learn. Remember, the English language is not just a collection of words and rules. It's a vibrant, living thing full of stories, ideas, and connections waiting for you. Embrace these skills. Find joy in the process, and you'll be amazed at how far you can go. Until next time, keep listening, keep understanding, and keep enjoying your English journey.